Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications.
I hope you're having a great day today. It is June the 19th. And I have some questions and some comments to cover in this video, as I like to do in all the videos, actually. Now, if you would like to ask a question about Maitreya, the Masters of Wisdom, ask me through posting your question as a comment. I do recommend posting it in the most recent video and not as a reply to what somebody else was saying 3, 4, or 5 videos ago. It's harder for me to pick up on the fact that you might have asked me a question. Or you can email me directly at searchforsigns@mail.com. I do want to make a quick announcement about the new Search for Signs Facebook page that I put up last week. Not much on it yet, just some videos about some UFOs and healing waters and Maitreya's visit to the Congregational Church in Nairobi, Kenya, 32 years ago last week. I did post a link to the Share International YouTube page where Benjamin Creme talks about the hand of Maitreya. Definitely check it out. It's very brief, but he talks very in depth, but very simply about the purpose of Maitreya putting his handprint on a mirror. And it doesn't look like a dirty handprint. It looks three-dimensional, very much like the Shroud of Turin looks. But it's a wonderful miracle and gift that Maitreya has given the world. And not to do too much of a spoiler alert, but it's a very, very effective way of invoking the help of Maitreya, even if you don't really believe in it, even if you just believe it at 1%. What does Jesus say? The faith is little as a mustard seed. You can move a mountain. It's kind of the same kind of principle. But anyway, definitely check it out. I also put a link to the Share International page on their website about the hand. Talks a little bit more about it, but it also has a photograph of the hand, so you can download it or take a screenshot or whatever and print it off or whatever for yourself. And that's how but I'll just let you hear it from Ben. Anyway, because he talks about it much better than I can. All right, first question. Maitreya has nothing to do with the Freemasons or Illuminati. Yes, flippin' photos. He has nothing to do with the Freemasons or the Illuminati. So Freemasons and Freemasonry is actually an ancient cult, really, from Atlantean times, and has survived throughout the ages. Of course, they're very, very restrictive in terms of who can actually be a part of the Freemasonry, which gives them a lot of the negative press that they've been getting at least over the last 100 or so years. I mean, Mozart was a Freemason. Most of our founding fathers, of this country were Freemasons. But the fact that it's some kind of devil worship or whatever like that is not true. I don't know much about the Freemasonry, but within the Freemasonry texts are the truths of the ageless wisdom teachings, just like there is in the Bible and the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita and so forth. It's just there's still a lot of distortion in those texts. But eventually, in the future, from what Alice Bailey said, that Freemasonry will be one of the ways that people, achieve at one with their soul, eventually. But it's just, right now it's just kind of a distorted, corrupt organization, just like pretty much everything else in this world. So, all right. Next question from Evan Bella Adam, Las Vegas. I'm assuming it's because I put the title of the video that you're commenting, Evan, it says, yes, some of the masters are already in the world, and you put Las Vegas. Well, Evan, since you're talking about Las Vegas, I'll give you 5-to-1 odds that there's actually not a master that's stationed out of Las Vegas right now. No, I'm just kidding. No, there isn't a master in Las Vegas, but maybe eventually. I don't know. I think right now in the United States, from all I've heard, it's New York, L.A., and San Francisco, and then there's one. I don't know if this master is in incarnation or out of incarnation, but is living in the Ozark Mountains somewhere. That's the redneck master of the country. I'm just kidding. No, I don't know if you've ever been to the Ozark Mountains. They're beautiful. So as a master, it wouldn't be a bad place to spend your abode, thousands of years in your abode or whatever. It's pretty in there. This is a pretty part of the country. All right. Next comment. The Flying Car Show, all the latest. You just threw your channel in the garbage bin too. Nonsense. Your channel is very awesome. Keep up the great work. Well, Flying Car Show, I could not thank you enough. You're very kind for saying that. I went back and listened to my video, and yeah, you're right. I actually kind of did, didn't I? I didn't mean to. I was just, what I was trying to say was that people who talk about conspiracy theories on YouTube or have their own website about it or whatever, they can't really prove what they're talking about, right? And I was kind of throwing my channel in there too, that I can't prove what I'm talking about either. Now, I have faith in what I'm saying and believe it to be true for myself, because I've had some experiences with Maitreya that lead me to believe that there's something to this, right? And I know that eventually people will start to see Maitreya, recognize him on TV, and eventually he'll declare himself before the whole world in the day of declaration. Then people will know that Benjamin Creme was right the whole time. Now, this isn't my information. I'm not coming up with this pretty much on my own. I'm relying on Benjamin Creme's master, Benjamin Creme's information, that questions that and answers that people have asked him over the years, even Alice Bailey to some degree, and so forth. And try to make it try to give some very simple explanations to what people have asked Benjamin Creme over the years and so forth about some of the questions that people answer. But this isn't anything really new. You know what I'm saying? So if you read Benjamin Creme, I know there's people who know about Benjamin Creme, have known him for years, have said to me, well, I mean, you're not giving any new information out there. Yeah, of course. To you, you've known about this longer than I have, right? But there are people out there that don't know anything about it, right? So it's kind of like, wow, this is kind of breaking news, right? So, but yeah, I didn't mean to throw my channel in the garbage bin, but I really appreciate you saying that. It makes me feel good. Thank you. All right, next question. QE Go All. That's kind of a cool name. I need to change my YouTube name to something like that. Right. There was one that was really cool. But anyway, even the flying car show is kind of nice. There are controllers and evil people. Call them whatever you like. Most people are kind. That is true. Even Benjamin Creme's master and Maitreya have all said that the hearts and minds of the masses of humanity is actually sound and want peace. So you're right about that. That's a good perceptive comment, because most people think people are bad. So these people are money hungry and want to control us. Think about GMO foods and big farms, evil, sick people. Well, that is true. I can see where you're coming from with that, because that's kind of what I was talking about, right? Now, it's interesting because when people hear Maitreya, and for the first time, whether they understand who he really is or not, I'd be willing to bet you, go back to Las Vegas, I'll give you 5-1 odds that they're gonna be blown away by his humility and by his love. Because the times that I've spoken to him, that was a thing that really that I took away from it. And one thing that he said, and this kind of is in line with what you're talking about, money hungry people and sick people and so forth. One time I sat down and talked with him, he mentioned a vice president of Coca-Cola who he said he was a good person, he had a good heart, he was just letting money get in the way. And I thought it was a lesson toward me, because I sometimes let money get in the way of my own thinking too. I'm always trying to make more money and this, that, and the other and stuff. So maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But sometime after that, it was years, maybe even over a decade, I was manning one of the Share International booths at this Peace and Justice conference in Atlanta. And these girls came up to the young girls came up to the table, and they were talking about killer Coke and how Coke goes into these, third world countries and takes all the water out of the wells so that farmers can't use water to irrigate their property and so forth. And they were going down to picket Coca-Cola, and they wanted me to go, and I said, I can't go, there's nobody else to man this booth, and blah, 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 blah. Plus it was hot that day, I want to go outside. I'm just kidding, no. And I said, can I make a suggestion to you? And they said, sure. And I said, I told them about my experience with Maitreya, where he was talking about this guy from Coke who was a good person, had a good heart, was just letting money get in the way, right? And they were saying the same thing. Oh, they're sick, they're evil, they need to be put in jail, and all that kind of stuff. And I told them this experience, and I said, if I can make a suggestion to you, why don't you go down there, and rather than protesting against them, you try to remind them that they are good people, they have a good heart, they're just letting money get in the way. And it's the same thing with pharmaceutical companies, it's the same thing with GMO foods and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Monsanto and all the stuff that they're doing. They're probably good people. They have a family, they love their family, they want a future for their family and everything like this, but they're letting money get in the way. And so that's where Maitreya is going to hit them, is in their heart. He's not going to argue with them. And so, but Maitreya will be the voice for the people, the voice of people who have no voice. You know, I was looking at numbers of annual death rates around the world, and so many people have died from the coronavirus over the past few months, right? And people who've died in cancer over the last few years, and people who've died from heart disease over the last few years, and so forth. Nobody talks about the fact that over 20,000 people a day die of hunger. They have no voice. They die needlessly. Can you imagine your family, your daughter, your son, your mother, your dad, your brother, your sister, who you love dearly, dying of hunger? Needlessly? In a world of plenty? And nobody cares? I mean, I cannot imagine the pain that that would cause me. And that's why Maitreya says within the seeds of that is a third world war, because somebody's going to say, screw it, this is it. If I can't have it, no one's going to have it. And that's where the problem lies. So Maitreya is going to galvanize and inspire all of us who want change to focus on what's important first, which is the hunger issue. We have to deal with that. Until we do that, there will be no justice in the world. There will still be racial divisions. There will still be all these other problems that we have. It is a very simple thing. And the problem is, too, is that it doesn't even involve people themselves giving aid to them. I mean, that will be a part of it eventually, but it's mainly country to country. And these resources like food, and building products and so forth, clothing products, are just sitting there, wasting away for no reason. And they can give them freely to them to help them out. If they just did that, it would bring about justice. It would ease tensions all around the world, and will eventually start to have nations trust one another a little bit better. And then we can tackle the really big issue of the environment. But all these celebrities that are talking about climate change and this, that, and the other, we need to change. It's a very important issue, don't get me wrong, but it won't happen. There won't be any resolution in that area of the ecology until we deal with hunger. And that's why Maitreya is going to inspire and galvanize humanity to do this. This is what the Buddha predicted, that around this time would come another Buddha by name Maitreya Buddha. He even called him by his name. That would inspire and galvanize humanity to build a brilliant golden civilization based on righteousness and truth. You can't build a brilliant golden civilization based on righteousness and truth. Or as it says in the Bible, the New Jerusalem, which was talking about the world, right? Not about some city in Israel. The New Jerusalem is the entire world. You can't build a New Jerusalem when half the world is dying of hunger. You can't call yourselves even men. We can't call ourselves men. I'm not going to throw this in your lap. I'm going to include myself in this too. None of us can call ourselves human beings while we are allowing that to happen. So Maitreya says, it's a crime. It's a shame. How can you call yourselves men with this crime going on? And that's how he's going to be speaking. So all these other things, all these questions, and I appreciated these questions that everyone asks about, this, and comments about the Freemasons stuff. None of that really matters. The only thing that really matters right now is ending hunger. So anyway, I hope that helps. And this goes to the next question. How does one become a master? Well, Peter, you're asking somebody who's not a master. So how would I possibly know the end result of it? I know their qualities, but to get there, I would say it would start, I think one of the things that Maitreya said to me is, he said, I never judge anyone on whether they're good or bad. I only notice the good things that they do. I think that's the start. I think that's a key to loving unconditionally. All these masters love unconditionally, not just Maitreya. The thing of it is that for eons, we didn't even know that they existed. So we just kind of lived within ourselves and didn't even know that there was people living on the other side of the world. And now the world's getting smaller and smaller and smaller because of the technology, obviously, right? Well, when people start to recognize Maitreya on TV, they might not know what they're looking at. They might not know that he's somebody extraordinary. They might just still think he's just a wonderful person talking about these things. Why isn't anybody else talking about sharing the world's resources in the way that he's talking about and so forth? And so they'll think about it and they'll go, you know what, this makes sense. This is kind of what I've been thinking all along, right? And he's going to articulate what we've all been trying to mentally articulate within ourselves about how to solve these problems. And he's going to say it in such a simple way that people can't argue with it. Really, they're like, wow, that makes total sense. Okay. And some people will be against it, but when they see people, wait, let me go back. When all of us start to see who Maitreya is for who he is, and then eventually declare himself before the world, there will still be people against him, thinking he's the Antichrist. Like I hear, and I get posts on this channel nearly every time I put a video up about how he's the Antichrist. Not so much over the last couple of days. It's been kind of nice. It's been kind of quiet, but I'm sure there'll be more in the future, right? Hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people will be marching against him. All this bad press on all this on the media and so forth, that he is the Antichrist, the one that everyone's been most feared, that Jesus is coming back on the clouds, and it's not him. He's different than what I thought, so it's definitely not him. I mean, they just go back and look 2,000 years ago at their own Savior, Jesus. The people at that time, the establishment at that time, thought the same thing about Jesus. He's not how we thought he was going to look. He must be evil. Let's get rid of him. And that's exactly what these people are going to be saying. When you see Maitreya, love them unconditionally, and the way he speaks to them, people who would be crying for him to be killed, and he loves them the same way he loves somebody like Benjamin Creme, who worked tirelessly for decades to get this information to the public. He loves them the same way. And then you'll see that he starts teaching us eventually, like, this is how you should, you should live. This is how that, parents should relate to their kids and so forth. It's not so much about being a master now. It's what's the first step? We need to start learning how to live together as one. And so when we see these masters, including Maitreya, as masters, we will have a much better focus in our mind about how to get there. But until then, it's just an idea. You know what I'm saying? It's just, oh, okay, well, that guy's, that's how they are. But when we see them moment to moment interacting on TV, maybe even in our lives, we'll go see them in public or something like this and see how they interact with people who hate them, or even people who love them, and how they don't want followers. They really don't want followers. They want you to be yourself. They want you to discover God within you. You can't do that when you're just blindly following somebody. That's why Maitreya is speaking on TV in incognito, so you don't just blindly follow him. That's not going to work. You have to want for the world what he's advocating for the world, which is peace, sharing, justice. By doing that, then it actually means something for you. That's why it's so very, very important to not point out that person is Maitreya on TV when you start to recognize him. Because then that person would start to follow him, or because they think he's Maitreya, or he might be the Christ or the Imam Mahdi. But imagine if 1 billion people are following what he wants, not him, what he wants for the world, and they see it for themselves in the same way that he sees it for us. Yes, we have to do this. If we don't do this, we're not going to have a future. And they have that kind of sense of urgency. That's going to be the change. And so don't worry about how to be a master now. Just, don't judge anyone on whether they're good or bad. Try to only notice the good things that they do and watch what happens, But these masters will start to teach us how to become a master. But, you can't just go from being an average humanity like all of us to being these masters. It takes steps. And the steps were written in the Bible in Jesus' life. The birth, the baptism, the transfiguration, crucifixion, and resurrection were all written in a way to mark the great expansions of consciousness or initiations that it takes in order to become a master. But all these masters are going to tell you that they were just like us, men and women just like us, flawed, had fear, had anger, were anxious, had anxiety issues, all that kind of stuff, worried about the future, regretted the past, were embarrassed about this. I mean, all this stuff. And they're going to say that the reason why they know wholeheartedly that 100% that every one of us are going to be a master one day is because they did it. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, they're going to be here teaching us how to take those steps, but it takes lifetimes to get to that. But eventually we will. Some of us are probably closer to being masters than others, but just because somebody's closer to being a master now than somebody else doesn't mean that other person isn't going to bebop past them. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's just, it's all up in the air now. But it's not a race. These masters will tell you, you got time, man. Relax. You know what I'm saying? Don't worry about it. Just worry about solving the hunger issue. You can't talk about God to somebody else when they're dying of hunger. You can't, it's, anyway, so hopefully that answers that question. All right, now, lastly, this comes from David O. All right, now this one's kind of a complex question. All right, so I don't know if I have enough time to talk about everything, so I'll try. But, hi, Gary, I have a question that relates to Jesus. I apologize if you answered this earlier, but I couldn't find it. Okay, Jesus is an ascended master, right? I grew up in the church and thus learned that God the Son, 1/3 of the Trinity, is He, the only begotten Son of the Most High, the creator of all things. Also, in the context of ascended masters, who is Lucifer and how does the devil relate to the masters? I look forward to your thoughts. Now, David, this is a very complex question that you're asking, I think. But what I'm going to do, I usually read one of Benjamin Creme's Master's articles. Now, in terms of Jesus being the only begotten Son, I wanted to read just a little bit of the Son of Man that Benjamin Creme's Master wrote about the Christ and who he really is and how it's different than what so many fundamentalist Christians view him as, and probably even fundamentalist Muslims view the Imam Mahdi as. Again, I have to say this, those are just names that we call the same person, Maitreya. We don't realize it, but the Christ, the Imam Mahdi, the Kalki Avatar, the Messiah. Those are names that we put on the Christ, or Maitreya. Those aren't names that he really prefers to go by. He prefers to go by the teacher. But to answer the first part of that question about the only begotten Son, let me just read this real quick and then let you think about it, okay? Many people await the return of the Christ with trepidation and fear. They sense that his appearance will promote great changes in all departments of life. His values, they rightly assume, will necessarily alter their ways of thinking and living, and they blanch at such a prospect. Besides, so mystical has been the view of the Christ presented down the centuries by the churches that many fear his judgment and omnipotent power. They await him as God, come to punish the wicked and reward the faithful. It is sadly to be regretted that such a distorted vision of the Christ should so have permeated human consciousness. No such being exists. In order to understand the true nature of the Christ, it is necessary to see him as one among equal sons of God, each endowed with full divine potential, differing only in the degree of manifestation of that divinity. So, and I could go on and on and on about it, but the idea and the belief that Jesus is the only true Son of God was put in there by man in order to control people. Because then it would mean that you would have to believe what they said wholeheartedly in order to get salvation from God. Even Jesus 2,000 years ago was trying to get people out from underneath that false belief that you had to go to the Jewish church, right, in order to be saved or to realize God or whatever. And said that, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and all that kind of stuff. So his message isn't any different. In fact, actually, one of the masters, the master Joao Kuhl, wrote through Alice Bailey that the greatest triumph for the forces of evil is monopolization of spirituality within the religions. And eventually all will be seen and have its place, but not at the level that people put it today, where they put all their spiritual eggs in that one basket. And so, there is no only true Son of God. And I know people, that's blasphemy. And I have people all the time, you're going straight to hell for that one. That's what they're kind of thinking, right? Or saying, but there really is none of that. And so when we see Maitreya, we'll start to see that is who he is. He's one among equal sons of God. And even when we see Jesus, he'll be doing the same thing. All that was put in there in the Bible by man. Jesus didn't say any of that. A lot of it was put in there by Paul, who never even met Jesus. He was a very advanced disciple, but he had his issues just like everybody else does. And he wasn't perfect. And there was a lot of, and to go back to what I was saying earlier about never judging anyone on whether they're good or bad, only looking at the good things that they do. He did a lot of really good things. You know what I'm saying? But there was a few things he did. It was kind of like, and one of them was he put so much emphasis on Jesus being the only true Son of God, that it created this huge problem for churches. They stopped seeing Jesus as who he really was, which was just the Son of Man. Jesus is no different than Maitreya in the fact that he sees himself as one among equal sons of God, only differing in the potential of that spirituality. So we are all souls. We are all souls in incarnation. We are all those things, and they know that, and that's how they're going to be speaking to us as that. So hopefully that answers that question. Now, in terms of Lucifer and the devil and all that stuff, I might have to get a little bit more into this in depth later because I am kind of running out of time. Satan in the Bible, as far as I'm concerned, and again, I know people will disagree with me on this, was just describing the selfish nature of human beings, and in a way that they could get it. Because the people at the time didn't have any kind of psychoanalysis of themselves. In fact, probably the word the mind or the emotions didn't exist in the vocabulary of the people at the time. So they used Satan, they used a personification of that selfish nature of humanity to kind of get their point across. And there's one in, I think it's 2 Corinthians, and people try to put this post up there. Oh, Paul was talking about an Antichrist figure, just like the guy you're talking about, Maitreya, where it says, even Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. And I'm convinced that when I read that, I'm convinced that what Paul was trying to talk about was check your motives, because your motives can oftentimes fool you. You think you're doing something selflessly, but you're doing it out of selfish reasons, and therefore you'll be thwarting any effort you do. And you can see it all the time. You know what I'm saying? Self-deception happens all the time, right? But he was talking to people, I think, that didn't know anything about psychoanalysis or psychology. That science wasn't even thought about, let alone developing at that time. So he spoke it in a way to people who could understand what he was saying. What else did Paul say? Don't throw pearls to swine. So why would he talk about it in a way that they couldn't even understand? It wouldn't make sense. We're on a different rung of the ladder now, okay? So that's what I think that is. Now, in terms of who Lucifer is, this is going to be a whole other thing that's going to open up. Thankfully, it's toward the end of this video. Most people don't listen to the videos this far anyway. But David, Lucifer comes from the Latin word lux, which means light. And Lucifer actually is the oversoul of humanity. It's not a evil, fallen angel that fell, and we can talk more about it, but that's who really Lucifer is. And I would love to have gone through every video and not have to bring this up, because it's going to cause a lot of people, if they do listen to this, it's going to cause a lot of people to really get triggered, as my daughter would say. But there is no devil. The devil is us. The devil is our selfish nature and our inertia and our inability to act when even people are dying of hunger. That's the devil. You know what I mean? That's the devil in us, right? But there is no hell where you go and, Lucifer, acted out against God in some rebellion and now rules in hell rather than serves in heaven. All those were symbols in the Bible. For one, the same thing with Genesis, about all of humanity going into incarnation for the first time and individualizing as human beings off of the animal kingdom. So, but anyway, we can talk about that later, David. But thanks for those questions, guys, and I look forward to talking to you again in future videos. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.